Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, where two busy dads get games to the table by any means necessary. Check us out, along with other great podcasts, at DicetowerNetwork.com.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 160, post-GenCon 2019 wrap-up, part 6, hot and heavy Euros. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to Every Night is Game Night, the podcast that helps you get your head in the game. This is Jason.
And this is Anthony.
Welcome back, Anthony. You have come on this is your show, man.
Right.
You know, I always give you every single year. I always give you a little bit of spotlight. This episode and the next one, we are going to hit hot and heavy Euros. Oh my goodness. This is Anthony in all of his glory. If you don't know ENGN, if you just latched on recently, this is where Anthony comes into his own. Are you looking forward to it?
Oh my God. Yeah. We're talking about 9 games the next 2 episodes. I own all but one of them.
Wow.
No, I own all of them. I'm getting rid of one of them, and you'll find out which one when we get there.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh no. I hope it's not the one that we're going to end on this episode. We'll see about that.
See.
We'll see. So we are hitting a lot of Euros. We may have a special guest come on for the next one because this one, I've played a couple games. Usually I don't play any of these games, but I've played a couple of these. Next episode, I have no chance. It gets heavier and heavier as we go. This will be the culmination of our look at games that were hot at GenCon. Yes, I know, it's October. It's almost November. We're still talking about GenCon. It's branding. You can listen to all 7 episodes in a row and get a whole bunch of games for your face. So we hope you enjoy that. But first, let us get to the In Liz We Trust segment. Unfortunately, we do not have Liz this week with us. She is occupado with some things in her personal life, but she'll be back before you know it. In the meantime, I have a little bit of a different kind of project for you that is currently live on Kickstarter. This project is called Vamp on the Batwalk. It is a trick-taking game. Trick-taking games on Every Night is Game Night. What am I talking about? Well, the reason I'm interested in this game as a game is because it is a trick-taking game that has a variant that is playing off of one of my favorite games, Hanabi. Yes, this is a Hanabi variant trick-taking game where you cannot see your own cards. So it's the theme being that you're vampires and you can't see yourself in the mirror, so you have to rely on other people in order to figure out how you are going to dress yourself, which is very, very silly. Talking about it because they are very, very close to funding. It's about 75% funded. It is due to fund on Friday, October 25th, so please take a look at Vamp on the Batwalk. Okay, that's another reason I'm looking at this project. John Samantov is the designer. Mike Rankin is the artist. They are both very, very dear friends of mine. This is nepotism at its best. These guys really worked hard in this game. I play tested it a couple of times. It's really, really fun. If you have it in your heart and your wallet to go check out and fund a very, very cool project from an indie designer, please go ahead and give a look to Vamp on the Batwalk. Okay, so we are going to get to 5 Euros this time. One expansion, which we'll lead off with right away. But the Euros we're going to be talking about today are Lockup. We have Sierra West. We have Gentes.
Hentis.
It's a soft G?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take your word for that because I have no idea.
I'm basing this off of my friend who has a PhD in bioengineering or something, and he said he was very strong that it was Gentes, so that's what I'm saying now.
What exactly does a bioengineering degree have to do with pronunciation?
I don't know. He went to school way longer than me. It doesn't matter.
I'm a professional botanist. I know how to pronounce things.
Yeah. It's a geneticist or something. I don't know.
And we're going to end the episode with a bang. Some of the hotness that is arriving in 2019. It is Tapestry. But we're going to get to the expansion first. This is an expansion. I put this on the list, and I knew, just to get Anthony off on the right foot, to get him on here. Not because of the name. The name really stinks, and Anthony will share that in a second. But This expansion to a game that Anthony completely and utterly loved last year. It is the expansion to Teotihuacan. Go ahead and hit him up with that awful name.
Yeah, it's that thing you just said. The late pre-classic period. They made a bad name worse, man. What are you doing?
That is pretty not good.
Yeah, it is one of the worst expansion names I've ever seen. And Like, to the point where I know several people who won't say the full name of the game. The original, they'll just call it City of Gods, which is fine. There aren't other games called City of Gods, and right. Teotihuacan is really hard to say. I've messed it up for, 14 months now.
Getting better, though. Getting better. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
You've only heard me say it like 40 times.
Yeah, I'm trying. And I'm like, I heard it. I'm going to say it. Still wrong. So yeah, this is the expansion, the late Preclassic Period, which I don't know. I don't even know what that means. It doesn't matter. The point is, it's more content for this amazing board game.
Yes.
And it's generally all good content. So there are several modules here, like most modern Euro expansions. There is the new temple track, which as you move up it, you unlock like permanent abilities, which are really cool. You have variable effects that basically it's an event deck that affects each season in the eclipse. You have a new set of boards that go on the main board that kind of change how the pyramid track and the decoration track work. And then you have player powers, which unlike regular player powers are both very good and very bad. So that's the really interesting thing about this game is that it adds all this really cool, interesting stuff, but it also stabs you a little bit. So you don't just get to move up extra on the temple tracks. You are not allowed to do certain things as a result. So like one of the ones that I saw some very interesting combos off of was, and I'm not even going to pronounce any of these, but it's one of them that whenever you get a mask, you get to move up on a temple track, right? It's pretty good. But when you lock your dice or go anywhere where you'd get one of those upgrade tokens, you can only take masks. You can't take anything else. So it really locks you into a certain strategy. And if you don't want to do that, that sucks for you.
Well,
so
and I know you love that. I know you love when games kind of rig in limitations. It sounds like it's more, like it's really roping you in and making you really think about whether you want to do a certain track or not.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's this whole idea of like in Marco Polo, for example, it's one of my favorite examples of this, and it's Daniel Tascini is one of the designers of that game. You start with a really broken player power, and it kind of tells you how you're going to play the game. You don't have to do that, but you're not playing optimally if you don't. This does that same thing with these player powers, right? And Tzolk'in did the same thing with its expansion and the player powers that came in. That is, okay, here's this kind of open box of things to do in a Euro, but if you play it 30 times, it's going to start to feel kind of samey because you start the same way and everybody has the same stuff. There's no asymmetry to it other than maybe a few of the starting goods. This really kind of stretches that a little bit, and I really like it a lot. So some of these are better than others, like the player powers, but there's a whole bunch in the box. It's not like it only comes with 4. I think it has 12 or 14 or something like that. So you have a lot of options to choose from, and if there's some you don't like, just chuck them. Don't use them. It doesn't matter. The changes to the pyramid building and the decorations are just generally very good. I think this is stuff that these are like tweaks that are based on just watching people play the game. I think it's not more content; it's just different, and I think it's different for the better. So you now have actions throughout the board that allow you to unlock dice when you take that action. Which is great. It really encourages people to lock their dice more often, which is really powerful. But in the base game, I would rarely do it because it was so expensive and you'd waste actions to unlock them. The box says not to throw all the expansions in at once, all the modules. But, we said forget that. And we threw them all in right from the start. It does make it a little bit tougher. And I will say, too, like, because I track my scores, I have segmented them now because my scores with this expansion are regularly like 50 to 100 points higher than my scores were before the expansion. Just because you are narrowed in, there is that new track, there is more stuff you're doing. So, yeah, this was fantastic. I love it. I knew I'd love it, but I'm really glad that I loved it as much as I thought I would.
Nice when a game just kind of like hits that, it's like, I have expectations for it. It's exactly met. And it's like, okay, great. Give me another one.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's what I want in expansion too. Anytime it says, okay, well, here's a way to make everybody feel a little bit different. Here's some like restrictions to make you have to think a little bit harder. Here's some new mechanics, but nothing that like extends the game or makes it more complicated. Just makes you think in different ways. That's good expansion stuff.
Yeah.
Here's a 5th player. Here's a new board. Here's a new mechanic that adds 45 minutes to the game. No, get that stuff out of here. I don't like any of that.
Here's a Venus track, which you're never going to use because you never get the cards.
It's just Terraforming Mars is a very good example of both good and bad expansions because they're just like, let's throw more stuff in. Mm-hmm. Does it work? I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because we're not reviewing a ton of expansions. I don't feel like a ton of expansions that are like really noteworthy are hitting this year. The one we reviewed last episode was Everdell, and with Everdell, it worked a little bit differently in the sense that it gave you more stuff. It was mostly more stuff. It wasn't like more limitations. So I can see that being a little bit problematic for people because, like I said, anything you add adds time. It doesn't take away anything. It just adds. But they did it in such a way where they added to a spot in the game at the very beginning that might be a little bit of a lack for people because you get started slowly. So it's like, okay, we're going to add stuff, but we're going to add it at a weak part of the game and just make that better. And it's like, okay, that's a good, I love when people just kind of think about what to put in an expansion and don't just like throw a bunch of more stuff in there. So it sounds like with Teotihuacan, they really retrofitted the expansion around what the game did and just gave you a different experience, not more, but different.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and like a lot of times too, like you look at a Euro expansion and a lot of it is like fixing things people complained about, and it's not, which is good if the game has problems. You fix those problems, sure, but right. Then they lose sight of what made the game fun in the first place, and it just becomes more cumbersome and longer and kind of, bloated as a result. And I don't think this does that. It is a little more bloated. I don't like using that word bloated, but it's a little bit more.
Padded.
If you throw all the stuff in. Yeah, padded's good.
There you go.
If you throw all the content in, but to be fair, the rulebook says not to do that. So right. Unless you're crazy like me and just don't care, then you should be fine.
All right, so that was the Teotihuacan X-Pack that we shall not name. Nah, I'm kidding. Late pre-classical period. Go ahead and look out for that one. Anthony approved. Okay, so I'm going to jump in. So this one is light. I know we called this episode Hot and Heavy Euros. This game's Euro because it has worker placement pedigree, but it's light. It's not. We're not talking heavy here, so therefore I'm talking about it.
Yeah.
I jumped right on this one. So this is Lockup. So that Lockup was designed by Stan Kodansky, published by Thunderworks Games. It is Lockup, a role-player tale, brought into the role-player universe. It was designed independently, and then when Keith Matejka, and because I think they're all local in Wisconsin, played the game, he's like, "Okay, I'll publish it, and I'll throw role-player in there." It's like, okay, role-player is popular. Let's get it in there. So in the role-player universe, it's not anything like the base role-player game. I think that it's just kind of a sense of IP and expanding the brand and expanding the universe. So this one it's set in a prison. And it's very important that it's set in a prison because it's trying to go for a type of vibe. So what the game's trying to do is, like I said it before, it is a worker placement game, but it's trying to kind of give you that sense of reading people. Like it's almost like a mashup of worker placement and poker in a way. And I'll explain how that goes in a second. So you're round by round, and there's 6 rounds in the game. What you're trying to accomplish is you're trying to do worker placement stuff. You're supposed to put there's 7 or 8 zones around the board. You place your workers there. You get resources like silver or scrap or whatever it is. Then there's a phase where you build stuff. So then you build cards, cash in your resources, build the cards, and the cards will collect sets or match symbols to your scoring stuff. Like that's kind of the basics of the game. Put your workers down, get stuff, complete the quest, quote unquote, which is to build things, and then score. So how you get there is what makes this game stand out. So when you put a worker down, you're gonna have 6 workers and they all have different strengths. And what happens is other people are going to put their workers down, but whoever puts down a stronger either worker or set of workers is going to get first place in a thing. So like, let's say you go to the smithy where they have metal, or what their game calls metal, and you have 5 strength, your opponent has 3 strength, you get the good reward and the other person gets the lesser reward. However, you can, the workers are tiles, and you can put some of those workers face down. So then you don't know. So you could put a worker somewhere and it could be a bluff. It's like, oh, wow, he's putting 3 tiles there, but your 3 tiles are like your 2 and your quote unquote lookout tile, which is nothing. So, you can just say, I really want this, and then make somebody go to a place which is the poker part of it, right? So like you picture Hold'em where you know some of the cards are public, some of the cards are private. So you're trying to make a move and it's like, does that person have pocket aces that they want to pair with the ace in the hole? It gives you that real sense of what's going on there. And that's why the motif is a prison, because I work in a prison. That's my other kind of part-time job. And there's a lot of cards that get played in a prison. You play a lot of poker and you play a lot of spades. Those are the two games you play, and you're always like, you're just reading people. Like that's the entire game. So I'm prejudiced because prison ordinarily is very boring. You really, in a real life, you don't want to make a game about a real life prison because most of the time nothing happens. But what this game is trying to do is trying to get that movie sense of a prison where like everybody's looking out for each other, and I'm gonna go to the smithy, and I hope that this person doesn't like get their stronger force into the smithy, and I'm just gonna sneak it in there, or I really want this right now, so I'm gonna send 3 beefy guys in order to complete my quest. So like that's really what the sense that you're going for. There's a couple of other aspects to the game. You can kind of like, there's goons that walk around, there's suspicion cubes, and once certain players get enough suspicion cubes, you trigger a raid, and that kind of depletes your scoring. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff, but that's the core experience. The core experience is this reading people. What did they put in your spot? Did they put a lot or a little? Where can I put my workers? How can I maximize the number of things I get into a turn? So before I get to the solo, because solo is very different, obviously, and there is a solo, which is surprising because it's like poker solo.
Yeah, it's funny.
So it's funny. But before I get to the solo, have you played the multiplayer?
No, I have not had a chance to play this in full yet. I have experience, learned the game. I've run through it a couple times, like by myself, and I'm very intrigued by it. But I've not had a chance to sit down and actually bluff it out with people, which I really want to do, just based on what I've seen and heard.
Yeah,
but have not had that experience yet.
I've never had this experience at a worker placement game. It's such a unique creature to do that, And usually in worker placement, it's very like people like worker placement because it's so low interaction. And there's some games that you can punt your workers around. It's kind of get aggressive. This one, you really have to pay attention to what people are going for. Like you have to pay attention to what their pieces are, and knowing that, they might build this thing before I do. They're going to try to ninja the silver. I need to make sure I get the silver. I need to go to the workout place and have more power so that, I can muscle my way in this space. It really is like very, very heady. So how can the solo possibly be good? If you know Keith Matejka, we had him on the show. He loves solo. All of his games are going to have solo. And he's a big believer in there's a solo game in any box. And it just needs to be kind of teased out. And he's willing to kind of rethink an entire game. And that's what he's done here. So instead of this like reading people, it's more of this kind of turbocharged push your luck thing. So you're going to get a custom deck, which is kind of like a little bit of Automa-ish deck. And you're going to place workers. And after you place a worker, the deck is going to turn. And that deck might put in one of its workers on your space. So you're thinking about it. So you kind of have a sense for, where the workers have gone and how strong the workers are in the deck, because it's modular. You can have like an easy opponent, middle opponent, hard opponent. So it's like, they've already placed their 5. Maybe the next worker will be a 2. Let me gamble that the next worker that comes out into the space is going to be a 2. So it's a push your luck. It's like, okay, I think I can get away with putting a 3 strength worker here because I think the deck is not going to put that worker there. Sometimes it does. Oh my God. But you're gambling. And it's, I love that. I love that they took the core, the essence of like, that what's that poker feeling? The poker feeling is not only reading people, but it's also kind of gambling and pushing your luck. And they kept that essence, and they just totally, redid the game to maintain the core experience, at least on the level of the push your luck. Is it fun? It's really clever. I love the idea. When I say I love it, I love the idea. And I love that they really thought very, very hard about a solo mode that does keep the experience. But the multiplayer is so much fun that it's hard to play the same game with the same pieces with I think, a kind of inferior experience, even if the mode is very, very clever. So I can see someone who loves this game have a good opportunity to kind of keep on playing if you're playing solo. It's just, the multiplayer, reading each other is so good that it made me miss playing multiplayer. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. For a game like this, yeah, it definitely feels like I have no problem with like rethinking or re-evaluating a game to make it solo friendly, but sometimes, you just can't replicate that feeling. And in this case, I'm not playing poker by myself, so yeah, it's the same kind of thing.
I love that they tried, though, and I love that they thought about it. I admire it. And I admire that it isn't crap out of solo. Keith really takes this stuff seriously. And I think some people might like it because people like push your luck. And it's really well executed and well done. I'm just talking about kind of me personally. The game is so good multiplayer that playing it solo just didn't feel right, but it works. That I'll kind of end there. But yeah, a really solid package. I can definitely recommend it. Not for everybody. Not everybody likes poker, but the one bad thing when it comes to a game that is like poker but not, it's a lot of guessing and therefore a lot of AP. Think of the master builder in Castles of Mad King Ludwig. It's a great idea. It's let me think about what other people want. I'll rearrange the tableau to figure out what people want. But you're not. You're just not thinking at all.
Yeah.
So games of this that I've played last a long time. And this is too light a game to go 90 plus minutes. And it's repetitive. You're doing the same thing 6 times. So that's a definite thing to watch out for. And it's kind of my one caveat. But other than that, if you can, just giddy up and not just get lost in space and really engage with the game that way, I can definitely give a recommendation to Lockup.
Nice.
All right. So the next game we're going to talk about, I believe you've talked about this on BGA, but there is a solo mode to this game, so we're going to cover it here. Did you talk about Sierra West on BGA? Did I hallucinate that?
No, you're right. I won't say how many weeks ago it was because I don't know when this is posting, but it was probably about a month ago. So this is a game that came out of GenCon. I think they had it at Origins too, at least to play. And it is all about the American West, as you can tell. Kind of like generic American West in terms of theme.
Which is funny because the prison game was the one that had all the poker sense. And this game doesn't have any poker, but that's usually where an Old West game is poker.
And I really appreciate that because I am tired of it.
Yes.
I like Wild West stuff. I grew up out west. This is the history stuff we'd learn in school, is the Oregon Trail and all that stuff. I'm tired of poker. They had poker back then. I get it. Okay, it's not like everybody just woke up every morning. It's let's put on my boots and go play some poker. It's not how the world works. Anyways, this game is about you have several different pioneers or just your own little meeples. They're 3 unique meeples. One of them is out exploring the mountain, one of them is over land, and one of them is down in the dirt digging for stuff. And on your turn, you're going to take 3 cards from your deck. You're going to put them in a certain order and slot them into this player board that's in front of you that has several different slots that hide things. And then you're going to have a trail that it creates. You will then move your workers down the trail in any order, however you want to do it, and just take the things and take the actions represented by those icons. Some of them cost things, most of them don't. Once you get to the end, you can go and take the summon actions on those cards, which are usually something to the effect of trade in a bunch of stuff for moving up on this track. The track is points, etc. Right? Mm-hmm. The big centerpiece of this game, though, is the mountain. You build the mountain out of cards, and your worker will move up the mountain. And it's kind of like Seven Wonders Duel, where you have a bunch of face-down cards, and then as you take cards off of it, you reveal new ones. So there's you start with 1 face-up card at the very peak, and then once that one's gone, there's 2 face-up cards, and so on and so forth. You're trying to get these cards, add them to your deck, and then they tend to be slightly more powerful when they cycle back through. The cool thing, too, is when you get the card, it can go on the top of your deck, so you can play it next round, or you can put it in your discard pile, because you don't really want to play it, but it's worth points, so why not take it, right? So that minor deck building aspect is kind of interesting. There's no thinning. It's very, very basic on that front, but it is kind of cool to build it up and try to remember what you have and when you're going to be able to trade stuff in for points. The other big thing the game does is it has 4 different modules. So you've got like the Apple Hill mode, which is really basic. You're just using these Apple tracks to generate stuff. I don't know. Thematically, it makes no sense, but I'll be the first to admit
this game has a good setting, not a good theme.
Yeah, I mean, and some of the modules are a little bit more, right? So the Gold Rush one, you have like dynamite and you're going into mines and you're blowing stuff up to try to find gold. The Boats and Banjos, you're going down rivers and you're trying to, you're fishing, but you're also, fighting off possible things that you run into. Outlaws and Outposts, you have like bullet cards and like this whole like Wild West motif where you're hunting down outlaws and trying to take them out. And it's about as thematic as any Euro of this weight generally is, but I really admire the effort they put into it, because most games like this wouldn't have modules at all, let alone things that tried to be different like this. So I do appreciate it. I really, really like the core mechanic here. I think it's really clever. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a good puzzle, so much so that it's really a lot more fun at 1 or 2 players. I really like it at 2. I really like it at 1. It comes with like a little automa deck that just basically tells you the things that the opponent gets to do on their turn, which is really quick. It's not like a drawn out automa factory style deck. It's just really, you flip a card, you do a couple things, you move on. It's very fast, which I like. So that is cool. 2 players is also very quick. The game finishes in, 45 minutes with 2. Once you get up to like 3 or 4 players, it tends to drag a little bit. The downtime is a little bit longer. People do all of that stuff on their turn, and there are some things you can do on other people's turns, but you can only do them once between everybody else's turn. So you can go hunting and you can go trapping, but you can only do those things one time over like all 3 other players' turns. So eventually you're just sitting there waiting for people to finish up, and it gets a little dull, and the game tends to drag. It's really designed to be quick. So I really quite enjoyed it. I'm going to hold on to it because I think it's a nice, quick, clever puzzle. It does something unique that I haven't seen in a game like this. The 2 big things that drive me crazy.
What's that uniqueness? Just so we're clear, like what? Because there's so many. We're talking about so many games. We're on our like 25th game that we're talking about. So like, what is that uniqueness you're talking about?
So it's really densely puzzly, right? You draw those 3 cards. And you don't have a hand. You just have 3 cards, and those are the ones you're going to play. But the order in which you play them and how you stack them, you could stare at that for a half an hour. You won't. The game is quick. Like even with that, it doesn't drag too long. And both players do this simultaneously too, so it's not like you're waiting for the other person to do it. But it's just a really clever, unique puzzle, and you almost always at some point are like, crud, I did it wrong, right? Like, which is a good sign. Like it means there's room for growth, and you can't solve it. I really, really like that.
Cool.
The big issue with this one, for me at least, was the rulebook is horrendous. It is poorly written. The examples make no sense. The way they mix in the module information is just nonsense. It's one of the worst rulebooks I've read in the last year. So
yeah, Portal hasn't put out a bunch of games.
Yeah, it's Board&DIce, and it's just I don't know what it's like. The same guys as Teotihuacan, but it's obviously different writers and different editors, because it's not nearly as and that rulebook had its issues too. This one's much worse. I don't know what it is. It's a light game, but I remember reading it like 3 times, being like, do I understand how this works? Does this make sense? And in the end, there was a few things where I'm just like, this is just what I'm going to do. And in the end, eventually somebody posts on the forums, and what I was doing was correct, thankfully. But yeah, the rule book is a nightmare. The modules are a little fiddly. Like the way everything comes out it's kind of fiddly to set everything up. And the way the rules tweaks are, I don't know. It's difficult to switch between them. You really have to prep for it if you want to play a different one. But once you know them all, it's good. I enjoy it. And yeah, I'm going to hold on to this one.
Cool. All right. So that was Sierra West from Board&DIce. All right. So we are going to round out this episode with 2 big civ games. Quote unquote.
Yeah.
Quote unquote civ games. Games with a civ setting. I wouldn't call these exactly, the most thematic civ games you ever played. But we are going to talk about Gentes.
Yeah, close enough.
Gentes. There we go. Gentes and Tapestry. So let's get to Gentes first. Gentes was designed by Stefan Riesthaus, published by Tasty Minstrel. Stefan Riesthaus has designed what?
Arkwright.
That game.
Anathema to Jason. The heaviest, driest economic Euro you can imagine.
3 hours to set up.
No.
All
3
of
hours
the bits.
each. You're crazy, man. No, I played that a couple months ago. It took us 7 hours.
So compared to that, this game is much, much lighter.
Oh my God. It's so different.
I would not call this a light game. I remember I saw Jason Levine's review over on the Dice Tower. He's like, this is a medium weight game. He's kind of hand waving it away. And it's like,
I mean, he's kind of right. This isn't a heavy game.
Relative, my friend.
Yeah, well.
Relative. Anyway, so there's some jargon at you just to kind of shape because you can go on and on about all the little intricacies of the game, but just to kind of give you that jargon pieces. So it is a civ-building, action selection, tableau building game. Okay, so one at a time. So the civ part is you are kind of building up. You know, like what are you doing in a civ? You're developing technologies, you're conquering land, or not conquering, but claiming land. And the game gives you at least a bit of that sense. So the board depicts, I think it's like Europe and the Mediterranean, like Sparta and different countries in that area. And along the way, you're going to be claiming that you can build little houses and on your personal board, you're going to be building these cards, and the cards represent different things that you can, different civ pieces. And that's about as much civ as you're going to get. It really, it's good window dressing. I was a little bit disappointed as a thematic gamer. I talk a lot about, being in the thematic headspace of a game. And what I'm really asking for isn't so much like, I don't need to be immersed in civ. I guess I just need the theme to help me learn the game, if that makes sense. Like I want a theme to make sense. So if I'm building up a city, I want to be able to know that, this needs to feel like I'm building a city now. Like this is giving me a resource that I need to in order to, make something better. And I just don't think this game really does that. This game felt very, very dry. I'm sorry. Have you played this game?
Yeah.
Because you hadn't played it by the time you reviewed it on BGA, but you have had a chance to play it.
Yeah, I played it last week. So it's 100% my kind of game. So it's funny to listen to you talk about it.
I have to mention the thematic headspace. I made it my thing. And it is.
I just find it funny because as a Euro, I'm like, there's a lot drier Euros out there. This one at least tries, but it is funny. Yeah.
It didn't give me access to what you were doing, but that's okay. Not every game needs to do that. Okay, so what are you doing? So the core of the game is kind of this action selection thing. And what is action selection? I like to think of it as kind of the opposite of worker placement. So when you place a worker, you have your little meeple and you put it down, you get stuff, and the meeple stays in the board. Action selection does that in reverse. So there's a bunch of spots on the board, and then you take a tile and you take the tile off the board, and then you do whatever action that is. So you can take an action from a spot and draw one of the cards from the tableau. You can take another action from a spot and get money. You can take an action from a spot and be able to play your card. So you're taking these actions, right? Only you take actions in such a way where you're kind of determining the strength of what you're doing, which is probably the most interesting core part of the game. So there's a time track. You only have so many actions that you can take, and that's determined by how many hourglasses it is. And often you can take the stronger version of an action and use more time and therefore have less overall action. So let's say you need a lot of money. You can either take the weak part of the action and it only takes one time to put a little hourglass in your thing and like, okay, I can, it's nice and quick. Or you need more money. It puts more hourglasses, gums up your track a little bit. You've taken a more powerful action, but you have less actions available in the next round. So it's almost like Architects of the West Kingdom in that way, where the more resources you devote to a spot, the better it is. And in Architects, you have like 1 billion workers, so it doesn't really matter if you put 5 of them. Here, it's very limited. You can only do 4, 5, 6 actions in a turn. And are you going to do 4 awesome, get a bunch of stuff actions, or are you going to spread them out, do 5, 6, maybe even 7 actions, depending on what round of the game? And, so that's kind of the core decision in terms of the action selection.
Yeah.
And then And then you have the tableau building. So then the tableau building is these cards, and the cards represent kind of aspects of your kingdom, and they're responsible for a couple of things. You play them by, like, you have little workers on your board, and they're kind of on sliders. So, like, you have the philosopher and the priest, and they're kind of opposite each other. So depending on where the philosopher is on his track, you can play a card that has a philosopher requisite of like 3 or 4, something. And those cards are where you score some points, and you can also build up your powers. So, you play a card and you get an extra action, or you get an extra resource, or you get an extra buy phase or something like that. And the more the cards you build, the more you score, blah, blah, blah. So that's really the game. I mean, there's so much more that you can go into, but in terms of like the actual feeling of what you're doing, I think that pretty much covers it. You're going to be doing this for 6 rounds, and whoever is done after 6 rounds is the winner. There's a solo mode. I'm not going to say too much about it because the solo mode is the game.
Yeah.
The only thing it does is the central market of cards is going to flow in a multiplayer game. In a solo game, you just remove a bunch of cards. Not randomly, but like certain cards just disappear after every round. It's just a game. So I don't know. Some people enjoy that, a very Uwe approach to a solo gaming over there, but it's in there, and it's not that easy. It feels just like the multiplayer game really does. I'm gonna have to accede to you on this one to tell people if you really thought it was a great game.
I think that underscores possibly what you think. Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I'll be honest. I haven't played it a ton because I was playing it off of Chris's recommendation on BGA a couple weeks ago.
Right.
But it's definitely my type of thing. It's very puzzly. It's very much an efficiency engine where you have a limited number of actions. Honestly, like that first round or two, you might only take 2 or 3 actions depending on how powerful they are. It reminded me a little bit, only in that way, of like a Feast for Odin, where maybe you have 6 or 7 workers, but you could throw 4 of them at an action, and now you only have 3 workers left. And so it's right. The more powerful thing you do, the less actions you get to take, like you said. I always really like that because it generally doesn't make sense to do a bunch of really powerful actions all the time, but tactically, sometimes you just need to. It also has that worker placement feel of there are several actions that are just more efficient and better, right? So if you want to play a card, there are some where you can take 1 time and it costs 1. But once that's gone, someone's taken that, now it costs 2 and take 1 time. And eventually it costs 4. And eventually you're spending 2 or 3 time to play a card, which is not efficient at all. But if you really need to play that card, which seems to happen towards the end of the game, I really enjoyed it. It's way lighter than Riesthouse's other game, but I can definitely feel the likenesses between the games in terms of like how the systems flow together. And really, there's just like this one solid way to go. Like you need to build up that tableau. Those cards are how you're going to score. You got to get cards. You got to play cards. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. I do agree though, like thematically, it's a Civ game, but mostly just because it's it's a tableau builder. You're building a quote unquote engine / tableau, and that's. You could say that about any Civ game because that's what you're technically doing to build a civilization. I'll talk about Tapestry in a minute. Right. And it's, so on that front, I'm with you. But in terms of a Euro, I thought it was really clever.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so let me clarify. I thought this was a good game. Like I can look at a game objectively and say, okay, that works. And there's a lot of different ways to play. Like you can really play where you put out a lot of cities and the square cities kind of give you stuff either at the end of the round or when you play it. And you could play that way. And you can also play where you really focus on your tableau and on those slider workers. And that's a very, very different way to play. And there's lots of different kind of pathing that you can go through that. I guess my difficulty is, as a person who doesn't play Euros, and I'm very proud of myself for getting through that review.
Yeah, I know. I was surprised you did it.
I wanted to stretch myself over here because I had a solo mode. I want to see what it was all about. Mm-hmm. And I love Civ games, and I really want a good Civ game, and this is not it for me. No. But not that it's a good game. It's not. I don't think it's a good Civ game. My point when it comes to pointing out theme, like I said before, I need theme to make sense of what I'm doing. The more thematic a game is, the more complex it can be for me. So like a game like Through the Ages is very, very complex, but it makes sense. Like, upgrading the military workers and your leaders, how they flow in and out. And like I can see that. And because I can see it, I can handle the complication. when a game, and this is, I know you said it's not a really, really complex game, but it is, there are like a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Like it there's moving parts. So I just didn't get access to it, So if you're looking for a civ game, you might want to look elsewhere. I guess that's kind of where I land, but it's a good game. And I definitely can see that. And because I played it with Brant, and Brant he loves everything, but he loves a good, puzzly thing. And he was just going gaga for this thing. He's like, wow, what a cool little machine.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I felt. Like, it's like, this is cool. It's like a fun little puzzle to play with. Yeah. I agree. It's not a civ game in necessity. Like, I like the theme behind it, and the artwork's really cool because it's unique and different. It's not just your typical, like, classical period,
right.
Civilizations building up. It's, ancient civilizations as they were. But I understand where you're coming from on that for sure.
Yeah. So cool little machine, decent little solo. It isn't going to blow you away on the solo side, but if you like that kind of thing, then we can definitely give Gentes a recommendation. Mm-hmm. And now we are going to end with the big bomb. This was the thing that's lit people on fire, for better or for worse, depending on how you take the Stonemaier hype train. Yeah. But we may have some comments about that towards the end of the episode. But we are going to get to the big bomb that was dropped a couple of weeks ago. Anthony's had a chance to play it. Hopefully you've had a chance to check out the solo. This is Tapestry.
Yep. Yeah, Tapestry. I got this in, a little while back. Stonemaier Games was kind enough to send a copy for review, and I've played it at, I think, every player count except for 5, and I've played solo a couple times. So I've had a good amount of time with the game and really got a sense of it and what I think. So let's go through a few points on this one before I give like my verdict, because it isn't.
I'm getting a sense. I'm sensing a disturbance in the force.
Yeah, we'll get there, but it's. It's an interesting game. Let's just say that. And if you listen to BGA, you already heard my review over there, so you know what I think. But
did that launch already? Oh man, I missed that.
Yeah. Well, we're recording in the future, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So time.
Okay. So first things first, let's just talk about how the game plays. It is, I will say, very much similar to Gentes, a civilization game in name only. It is very much just, here's a mechanic, and a clever enough mechanic, and we'll just throw some civilization trappings on top of it. You have a board with 4 tracks. They represent the 4 basic core things of any civilization game: science, technology, exploration, and military. On your turn, you're going to take one of your tokens, move it up on one of those tracks, and then do whatever the action is. You have to pay to do that as well. You have various resources. Most of the time early in the game, it doesn't matter which resource you spend to take that action. And these are really just your action points. Later on, it matters more as you specialize into those 4 fields, right? And so each of those has kind of a unique ability that it does. Like in science, you can roll a die, and then that die will allow you to move up for free on another track. Sometimes you get to take the benefit, sometimes you don't. Technology, you get special cards that go next to your player mat, and those will upgrade at the end of every round, sometimes other times, and they give you special bonuses. Exploration allows you to pick up new tiles and then sometimes place those tiles on the map. When you do that, you get stuff and points. And then military allows you to quote-unquote conquer, which is really just putting a piece on the map somewhere adjacent to where you are. You can technically move into someone else's space, and they call it toppling, but there's no combat, there's no dice rolls, there's no card draws. It's just, I topple you, the end.
It doesn't even give you the side thing where you compare cards or whatever it is?
No, there's a trap card that they could have in their hand of Tapestry cards. If they play that, they just topple you instead. So I don't like it at all. But it's like, and you're talking about theme in games. I don't mind when those things are not thematic unless it like messes with the mechanics. And you're calling this a military track, you're calling it conquering, and it's neither of those things. It's just bland expansion on the map. So, right. And you score for that, but it's not particularly interesting. So there's that, right? There is then an income phase, right? And this is kind of where the game gets a little wonky, in my opinion, because everybody...
The game's not wonky already? It already hasn't been like the most sterling review.
Well, just like in terms of mechanics, you're going to pick up these Tapestry cards throughout the game, and you will then, when you take your income phase, you're going to get to play one of them on your player mat. You're only going to get to play 3 in the game unless you have a special civilization or there's some things that break that rule, but generally you play 3. They're usually very powerful. I think they're extremely cool. They do a lot of fun stuff. They have a lot of the player interaction that the game otherwise doesn't have at other points. And I like that part a lot. It reminded me of the encounter cards in Scythe, where when you get to those and you draw those, you're like, this is really cool. But you only get to do that like 3-4 times in a game because there's only so many, right? It's not cool. It's like the best part of the game, and you don't get to do it very much. So it's the same thing. You then take all of your income. So throughout the game, you're going to take these little buildings off of your income mat, and you're going to place them on your capital city, which is this giant 9x9 or 16x16, I can't remember, grid. And those little buildings represent the 4 different types of income. So you have like, it doesn't matter what they are. It's just the 4 different tracks. Each have their own income thing. Mm-hmm. Then you will also get to use your civilization ability, maybe, depending what that is. You can choose when you go to income phase, and other people can keep going. So it's kind of like Everdell, where you can end your round earlier than everybody else and then proceed. And then as a result, you can finish the game before everybody else and be bored. So the first couple times we played with everybody learning, this didn't really happen. But we did have a game where somebody finished like a good 20 minutes before everybody else was done, or at least before the last person was done. So they went to the bathroom, they got something to eat, they came back, they were distracting people. Like, it was not ideal. So
oops.
I don't think the game's designed to do that. I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that you can race ahead and do cool stuff, but then you're going to be done earlier. You don't have as much resources, right? It doesn't manage that well. The general flow of the game, because of that, is just, I don't know. It's like jerky. It's herky-jerky. You're like, you go forward a bunch and you pull back a little bit. It does that thing that all Stonemaier games tend to do, where it starts really slow. You only have the 4 action points to start the game, and that first round you might score 5 or 10 points. The second round, maybe you'll score like 30 or 40 points. And then the third round, once you get towards the end, and that fourth round is crazy, you'll usually double your score. I don't mind that, like the slowly building over time. Like Russian Railroads is one of my favorite games, and it does that too. You score like 5 or 10 points, and then it ramps up. But you're not doing a whole lot that's very fun in that first round. You're just kind of going down the early parts of these tracks. Maybe you put a couple things on the map. It still takes 30 or 40 minutes. It's just a slow start. It's like Scythe. You're not doing a bunch to start the game. So that's kind of how everything plays. Presentation-wise, the game is beautiful. Like, you have, at certain points on these tracks, if you're the first person to go from like era 1 to 2 to 3 or whatever, you will get a building, and the building can go on your capital city map, takes up a bunch more spaces. They're like little polyomino-shaped bases, so they take up more space. Sometimes you can't place them, which is really obnoxious because some spaces are blocked on that map, but they're generally cool. They don't do anything, though. They don't have special powers. You don't move them, other than the fact that they're shaped differently. That's about it. So it is kind of, you look at that, you look at this overproduction on these pieces, and then you look at the price tag, and you're like, well, if these were cardboard, maybe this game would cost 60 instead of 100, and that would be cool.
Jamie did put a post about like the production stuff. I'm not sure if I'm getting this exactly right, but like there was a way to print this game where it was like, I don't know, 70 or 80. And then there was a way to print this game that was completely and utterly blinged out, and it was like for an extra $10 per copy. And so just because like the base prices for printing a game have gotten higher, but blinging stuff out has gotten either the same or cheaper. So now you're just getting all of these blinged out games because all these companies are looking at going, well, I'm paying X amount. That's more than I used to pay. I might as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I don't know what to think about it. Like, this is like a thing, especially like if we get review copies where like, I didn't pay for this, but I look at the price and I have a really, really hard time recommending a 90-minute 2.8 weight, themeless Euro for $100. I'm like, oh, I don't know. So verdict-wise, I don't know that it says it's a 4X game, but it certainly isn't if it does. Civilization games, to me, need to have those 4Xs. That's the whole point. You're exploring, you're expanding, you're exploiting, you're exterminating. It's maybe got 2.5 of those, if to be being generous. Game starts really slow, like I said, ends at random intervals, which sometimes is fine. It's not an issue, and it can actually be kind of cool if it plays out that way and someone comes from behind. Other times it could just lead to a lot of downtime and waiting. theme is somewhat pasted on. Like the technology deck is just one giant deck of cards. So at one point, people just went off, making fun of it a little bit, but they were out in space. They were at the end of the exploration track with space tiles, and they were researching nails. So the different eras on the different tracks happen at different times, and the technology cards are kind of divorced from that. So everything is just all over the place. Some of the Tapestry cards are like, ancient philosophy or fascism. It's just things that are thematically related to civilization games, not necessarily the flow of a civilization game. And so I don't generally care about theme, but I was like, yeah, I get it. This is kind of weird. The engine building in this is a lot of fun, though. I will say that, like going up those tracks, and then when you can start comboing things like towards the middle to latter half of the game, that is fun. You take an action, it generates more resources that you can then use to take future actions, which generate more resources. And that's like the push and pull. You need to generate resources to continue taking action so you're not done early. But you also need to get those buildings off your mat to generate more income. I really like that a lot. And I think it's even better like in the solo mode because you can kind of just focus on that. Mm-hmm. Like any of these Automa Factory things, it's a little bit much on the solo side. Like the number of things you got to keep track of, what the Automa can and can't do, how the movement works, when they get benefits, when they don't get benefits, when they score, when they don't. I had the rulebook in front of me for a bit, but when I got it down, it was like a 30, 40-minute solo playthrough, so not too bad. So yeah, end of the day, on BGA, I gave this like the softest of plays. It's definitely not a buy for me. I'm going to pass my copy on. I don't think I'll hold on to it. But I do enjoy parts of it. I appreciate what's being done with it. I wish it was an actual like thematic Civ game because it looks like one. And I feel like it could be one. Maybe with expansions, it'll kind of carve it up a little bit. But as it is, it's just not really for me. It goes just a little bit in each direction, but it doesn't go enough in any one of them.
I wish it wasn't a Civ game. I wish it was.
Yes.
Why did it have to be a Civ? Like, it could be like hyper focused on city building or so. I don't know. Like why a Civ game for I think Tom Vassar made this point. Like a Civ game can't take under 2 hours, and you're making the point about it can't be 2 X's. It has to be all 4. Yeah. And so why? You're just kind of creating an expectation. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, just focus on the mechanisms." No. No, go away.
No, Civ
this
games
matters. It really does.
Things. Yeah, the best Civ games, and there hasn't been a good one in a while, I'll be honest. Like, I can't remember the last time I played a Civilization game. I was like, oh my gosh, this goes up on my shelf. Yeah. Through the Ages, Nations, even like the old Civilization, the board game, the Fantasy Flight one that's super fiddly. I like that. But they have all those things, and they do all that stuff, and they're long, but that's great. This is, I've come to the conclusion, I think along with a lot of people, that 90 minutes to 2 hours for a Civ game is just not doable. Like, you just can't. As a
game, though, like, let's say that it was a different theme. Would it be more of a recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. It just gave me a really similar feel to his other stuff, like Charterstone, where it's got some cool mechanisms, but they don't do, I don't know, they just don't do much beyond like that core thing that they're doing, or Scythe, where it just starts really slow and then you kind of flow through things and it gets a little samey as you go along. Like the Civilization cards add some asymmetry, but some of them are a lot more interesting than others. Some of them you get to do cool things all the time, and other things you just get to do one cool thing during the income phase. Or maybe not even a cool thing. Maybe you can't do anything with it. Some Tapestry cards are really awesome. Some of them are not. Like one guy in one game, he had 3 trap cards in his hand and nobody tried to conquer him. So that sucked. That was a wasted hand. I mean, those are worth 10 points when you play them, but I guarantee you can get more than 10 points from a good Tapestry card if you play it at the right time. So I feel like it could be tighter, better edit. I'm not a game designer, so I don't know what fixes anything. It felt loose. It felt just a little disjointed, and I
didn't have fun.
Yeah, except I kind of did sometimes. It's so weird. Like when you play a game, you're like, oh, there's so many things here, and I like this, and I like this, and I like this, and the overall experience is just like, it's all right. So,
so I mean, okay, so Tapestry soft play. I've seen enough reviews and I've seen enough playthroughs where it's like, if it floats in my ambit, I will give it a shot. But I'm not going to seek it out just yet. Just wanted to end really quickly in terms of the hype. So that's what Stonemaier does. So Stonemaier has perfected this rollout thing, or like they're always kind of doing something new with it. So they got off Kickstarter, so they're doing it differently. This one had Jimmy Stegmaier kind of sending the game out and making announcements like, we're sending it to these reviewers, and the reviewers had an embargo, so all they could do was post videos and post pictures of gameplay, and then after the embargo date, then you could unleash your opinions. And while that whole process is going on, there's a pre-order, and so there's this kind of dribble of hype, which is kind of how you do it to keep your name in people's minds, and to keep the name of the game in people's minds. It's following a lot of like classic lessons of hype generation, but then there's like the embargo thing, which is more of a video game and some other things. So a lot of mix happened. So you're a marketing man, so you probably have more insight than I do. What did you think? Did you feel like that? Not that the hype was justified. I don't want to answer that question, but did it feel right, or was there something a little bit off about the way the hype was approached here?
No, I think it was fine. I mean, like you said, this is how the video game industry has been doing it for 20 years. It's how most industries do it. It's how the car industry does it. It's how, consumer electronics industries. Look at Apple. I mean, they lock that stuff down and then they release it all at once. It's the best way to get everything out there at once and get everybody paying attention is just to release it in a giant wave. If you remember back to like Mechs versus Minions, when that came out 3 years ago, that was everybody under their sun was reviewing it, but nobody knew it existed until the day the embargo dropped, and then all of a sudden it's everywhere. That's what you want, is you want to take over the airwaves. If you can take over the airwaves for an hour, it's better than having like a trickle of information for a month. I think the reason people responded negatively to it is because our industry doesn't feel like a traditional industry. It feels, mom and poppy, like we're friends with we know these people. You go to cons, you meet them, you play games with them. It's more friendly. And so when it feels more sterile and, corporate almost, it can be a little icky, but honestly, that's just how industry works. So
I equate Stonemaier nowadays to Days of Wonder back in the day. So Days of Wonder, they had like one release a year. It was always beautiful, and you kind of didn't know about it. Like they would drop hints of it or whatever, and then they release it at a con, and it wasn't this rollout-ish. And if it was a good game, it sold well, and if it was a bad game, it disappeared. So Quadropolis sold really well, and Ticket to Ride, of course, Conquer the World, and then Relic Runners, not so much.
Yeah.
And not every one of those games was amazing, but people still liked it because it was like a brand. Like this is what Days of Wonder does, and they let the word of mouth and the confidence in the brand kind of sell it. Like I feel like Stonemaier is at the point where they could just say, Stonemaier's releasing a game, and not have to kind of go through these extra little things. And it's not as if they were it's not as if we have professional like ad agencies, in these other industries, there are ad agencies that can like make your game, look great. Here it was, reviewers and people that we trust with objective opinions. And now they're in this position of, okay, now I'm obeying this embargo. How do I say it? How do I approach it? And I don't know, like it just, not to say anything. I don't want to say anything about any of those individual reviewers. It just I think that you put your finger on it. Like it just didn't feel like my hobby anymore.
Yeah. I think it's going to keep happening though. Like the hobby's getting bigger, the companies are getting bigger, they're making more money. This is just the next natural step. And so there'll be growing pains in that regard, and I don't want it that way. I work in an industry where this is what we do, but it doesn't mean I like it for certain things. It's kind of just the way everything goes. Yeah.
So, I mean, I was definitely kind of irked by the hype a little bit. Like you said before, Anthony, I understand why it's happening. It's going to happen more and more. I guess I got to get used to it. But, and maybe like if the game were better received, and if the game didn't have these kind of issues with it, like if Viticulture was released that way, I think Viticulture is an amazing game. Or at least the essential version.
Yeah.
If they released the first Viticulture according to this, it might not have gone well. But I don't know. Like I just wanted to like put it out there. I feel like we bellyached about money in the last couple episodes, and now we're bellyaching about hype.
Yeah, I know.
I need to.
We're a couple old guys just whining about everything. Back in my day.
Okay, I just realized something that I need to stop. I need to have a nice, positive conversation at some point.
Oh man. Let me just say, this game is not bad. If you got it, don't feel bad about it. It's a lot of people like it, and I respect that. It's like a swimming in sevens type of thing here. It's fine. And so the reason we have this really long conversation about it is because of all that hype. And that's why we're having that conversation about all that hype, is that if this was just a normal game released by any other publisher as is, and we're like, oh, this is this, and it's, it's a play, I guess, 6.57, and then we'd move on. But it's Tapestry, so it's a whole.
All right, so that was 5 games and some thoughts about that. We are going to get to some more hot and heavy Euros in the next episode, including another big release, and I'm sure Anthony is hyped up to talk about Black Angel.
Yes, yeah, I've talked about that one a lot lately. I'll keep talking about it.
Sure. Go ahead and go over to BGA. A lot of these reviews are on BGA. We're hoping that, get a little bit more time over here and some attention paid to some of the solo modes. So you get a little bit of a different wrinkle in terms of if you listen to both shows. If not, just fast forward and pick one.
Yeah.
Pick one version of that review. But yeah, go ahead and check out BGA, BoardGamersAnonymous.com, the sister website of EveryNightIsGameNight.com. All funnels to the same place. Check out that Patreon. Check out the One Stop Co-op Shop, the YouTube channel, and the Slack where I am hanging out and having a lot of interactions with folks. ENGN_podcast on the Twitter. Every Night is Game Night Facebook group. There is no way you're going to miss us if you really, really want to check us out. We are all over the random geekdoms except for Reddit. I think I'm okay. I can only take so much of these, and Reddit is the one that makes the cut. But anyway, so yeah, we are not strangers. Please reach out to us. We are always willing to interact with you guys. So until next week, this is Jason.
And this is Anthony.
Go ahead and grab a game off of that shelf and let's make every night a game night. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, the podcast that helps you get your head in the game. This is Jason.
And this is Well, okay.
I'm keeping that.
Are you really?
No, I'm not keeping that.
Okay. Don't make me come over there.
That's a great blooper, though.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And this is I Forgot My
You
Name.
forgot your own name.